All right, for this next video, I'm going to go through number 1, located at the bottom of page 311 in section 3.1. Okay, so the thing we're going to be learning about in chapter 3.1 is something called dimensional analysis. And what that is just a way of solving problems that have lots of different units in them. And by units, I mean things like inches or miles or seconds or gallons or anything like that. And so rather than try to describe what that is, I'll just do a couple of examples so you can see how it works. So this first problem here, found right out of the book, talks about a Toyota Prius, and it gives us the gas mileage that the Prius gets. And it asks how many miles we'll be able to drive with on 4.5 gallons of gas. Now, many of you may be able to solve this just kind of intuitively. And that's fine, but I'm going to do it now using this dimensional analysis. And the reason being, when these problems get more complicated with more units, the intuitive method will become less efficient, and the dimensional analysis method will make it a pretty straightforward operation. So we're going to start by writing out the rate that we're given here. And remember, rates are anything with the word per in the middle. So we're told we get 51 miles per gallon, so I'm going to write that out as a rate. That's the city mileage, and since we're driving in the city, that's the one we're going to talk about, the one we're going to use. So we get 51 miles for every 1 gallon. We can go 55 miles in 1 gallon. And the answer we want is just miles. So when we get after whatever calculations we need to do, our answer is just miles. Our answer isn't going to have anything to do with gallons. So one way to think of this is that we need to get rid of these gallons. And so here is where the dimensional analysis is going to come in. So remember, when we multiply fractions, you can cancel on the diagonal. You can cancel on the diagonal. And if you go back to the introductory video in this lesson, you see where I do some examples of that. So with fractions, you do something like cancel a factor of 2 or 7 or something like that. But with dimensional analysis, we cancel units. So we treat units just like numbers and cancel them out. Here's what I mean. So if we want to get rid of these gallons on the bottom here, we want only miles in our units. So what I'm going to do is multiply this other fraction by another fraction with a gallons in the top. And that will cause these two things to cancel. And we have our number of gallons here that we can use. We're told that we have 4.5 gallons. And since that's not a rate, we can just put that over 1. Remember, you can do that with any number to make it into a fraction. So what's going to happen here is that these gallon units are going to cancel each other out. And the only unit left is going to be the miles. So we have 51 times 4.5, and we do the calculation and see that's 229.5 miles. So we have just figured out that with 4.5 gallons of gas, you could drive 229.5 miles on this Prius in the city. And this is technically, of course, over 1, but we don't need to write that. That's optional. All right, now we're going to look at part B of number 1 on page 311. So part A asked us for how many miles we could go on a given number of gallons. Part B flips this around and asks us how many gallons we'll need to go a certain number of miles. So one thing we want to focus on is, first of all, what the unit of my answer is. Dimensional analysis, as I said, is all about units. So it says how many gallons. So that means that at the end over here, our answer is going to be some number of gallons. And since this isn't a rate, it's just going to be gallons, we know we can put that over 1. So our answer, we have to come up with a some number of gallons. And again, we're going to start, just like last time, with the rate that we're given. In this case, the rate is the gas mileage. And since this one doesn't tell us whether we're driving in the city or on the highway, I'm going to just think about this a little bit and see that driving 3,450 miles is a lot of miles. So if you're driving that distance, you're probably going to be doing a lot of highway driving, so I'm going to use the 48 miles per gallon figure. So before I just write that down as a rate like I did last time, I'm going to look at my units. I want my units to have gallons on top. So I'm going to write this kind of backwards. I'm going to write 1 gallon on top and 48 miles on the bottom. So 1 gallon of gas gets you 48 miles. We can flip it and it still gives us the same information. So I want to get rid of those miles, and we see in our problem we're given a number of miles, and since I want to cancel out the miles, I put it opposite the miles that I want to get rid of. And I put that over 1 because that is just a number of miles, it's not a rate. So what's going to happen here is these miles are going to cancel, because we can cancel on the diagonal when we're multiplying fractions, even when we're talking about units. So what that tells us is, since those miles are canceled, I just multiply straight across, and I have 3,450 times 1 gallon. So that is 3,450 gallons over top of 48, because the miles canceled out. So all we're left with is the 48. So now the only thing left to do is to simplify this. We have 3,450 over 48. So I look on my calculator, I do the division, and I get 71.875, or about 72 gallons. I'll just round that off. So my miles have canceled. I've done the arithmetic with the numbers, and I end up, and it turns out that I need 72 gallons of gas.